In the opulent embrace of Le Pavon, where every chandelier seemed to cast a spell of starlight, the whispers of affluence hummed a lullaby of luxury. The air was thick with the scent of power and prestige, each table a silent testament to the might of its occupants. Amidst this grandeur, in a secluded nook veiled by a cascade of orchids, sat John Maxwell, a man whose very name commanded the respect of Silicon Valley. At 48, his life was a tapestry of success and sorrow, woven from the threads of a tech empire and the silent, unyielding grief of a widower. His Armani suit was a fortress of fabric, impeccable and cold, mirroring the emptiness that had taken residence in his chest. Before him lay a plate of untouched filet mignon, its aroma a poignant reminder of the life he once knew, now as distant as the stars above. The empty chair opposite him screamed in silence, a constant echo of loss. His fingers, wrapped around the stem of a Bordeaux glass, tightened as the red wine within danced like the specter of his past. 10 years had elapsed since that fateful day when his world shattered, since Lillian, his beloved, and their 3-year-old son Caleb were ripped from existence in a cruel twist of fate. John lifted the glass, the weight of it laden with memories, when suddenly a voice, tender and quivering, sliced through the heavy air. "May I have your leftovers, sir?" It was a plea, simple yet profound, that stopped him mid-motion. He turned, his gaze falling upon a young woman, her presence unexpected, her eyes a window to a story untold. What could drive her to such a humble request in this cathedral of wealth? She appeared older than her years, perhaps beyond the tender age of 19. Her blonde hair was gathered into a disheveled bun, with tired curls escaping in a dance of weariness. Her coat, worn thin, draped over her shoulders like a protective shield against the encroaching autumn chill. In her embrace, she cradled a baby, no more than 7 or 8 months old, swaddled in a blanket whose color had long since faded. The infant's gaze, wide and radiant, was fixated on the mound of mashed potatoes and the succulent slices of meat that still steamed on John's plate. Her voice, a mere whisper, cut through the restaurant's quietude with the sharpness of a violin string breaking. John, as if emerging from a deep slumber, blinked in bewilderment. The room fell into a hushed reverence. Forks hung suspended in midair. Conversations dwindled into a stunned hush. A waiter, concern etching his face, moved forward, but John's subtle hand gesture halted him. This small action spoke volumes, commanding yet gentle. He scrutinized her face, searching for signs of deceit or manipulation, but found none. Instead, her expression was a tapestry of exhaustion, woven with threads of fierce determination, not for her own sake, but for the fragile life she held so close. She wasn't begging. She wasn't stealing. She was merely surviving, her every move a testament to a mother's unyielding devotion. John felt his throat constrict, a candle between them flickering as if in sympathy. In that fleeting moment, a quiet revolution began within him. Not a sudden epiphany, but a gentle stirring, a spark. Little did he know, this single encounter, this poignant question, would unravel the fortress he had constructed over a decade. It would guide him toward an unforeseen redemption, through a love he had never anticipated. He stood there, a statue in time, his eyes locked on hers, as if the world beyond had momentarily ceased to exist. Baby's eager lips. It was as though the world, with all its clamor, had melted away into a soft hum, a backdrop to this tender tableau. Her blonde hair, unbrushed and wild, framed her face in disheveled waves, catching the candlelight in broken golden glimmers. Her coat, too small and worn, barely clung to her frame. Its fabric was thin at the elbows, and her sneakers, tattered and grimy, looked as though they might fall apart with each step. But it wasn't her appearance that made John's heart skip a beat. No, it was her eyes, those windows to a soul so deeply wounded, yet so fiercely protective. They did not plead or falter. Instead, they held him with an unflinching gaze, filled with a potent mix of sorrow, dignity, and an unmistakable courage. A courage born from having nothing left to lose but the precious life she cradled. She wasn't asking for herself. Her plea was silent, yet it echoed louder than any shout could. "Take it," John whispered, almost in reverence, nudging the plate toward her. She didn't lunge for the food. There was no desperation in her actions. With a grace that struck him like a silent prayer, she reached into her satchel, pulling out a small, frayed cloth. With meticulous care, she wrapped the mashed potatoes in meat, folding the cloth as if each piece were a treasure, not mere leftovers. Kneeling, she drew her child closer, her movements gentle, almost reverent. From her pocket, she produced a small plastic spoon, and with a tenderness that seemed to quiet the very air around them, she scooped a small portion of the warm food, blowing on it softly before offering it to her baby. How could one witness such a scene and not feel the world shift slightly on its axis? Here was a mother in the midst of her own storm, creating a haven of warmth and care for her child. As the child's mouth opened instinctively, his tiny lips parting and tongue reaching out, a spoonful of mashed potatoes met its mark. The infant cooed, a sound so pure and joyful that it sent John's fingers curling around the table's edge, as if seeking some anchor in the wave of emotion that washed over him. The baby's face, bathed in the warm glow of candlelight, lit up with delight, his chubby hands gently patting the girl's chest. His smile spread across his round cheeks like the first light of dawn, breaking through after an endless night. It was a smile John had not witnessed in years, not since his own child. Something caught in John's throat, a lump of nostalgia and pain. He glanced away for a brief moment, trying to blink away the sudden mist clouding his vision. Yet the moment the baby let out another happy sigh, John's gaze snapped back, drawn irresistibly by the warmth and contentment one simple spoonful could bring. The girl, with infinite patience, continued feeding the baby one spoonful at a time. Her hands were as steady as her resolve, her breathing as calm as the still air around them. She paid no mind to the silent, wealthy observers who might judge or whisper. Her focus was singular, unwavering. She was there for one purpose alone, to nourish her son. John felt his heart twist, a slow, deep awakening from a long sleep. This wasn't about pity or charity. No, he was witnessing something sacred, a love so profound it could neither be purchased nor replaced, nor fully comprehended by those untouched by loss. When the child seemed satisfied, the girl carefully packed the cloth bundle into her bag, wrapped the baby snugly in his blanket, and rose to her feet. With a slight nod towards John, not in gratitude but acknowledgement, she turned to leave. She turned away, her figure weaving through the maze of tables and chairs, and stepped out into the cool embrace of the night beyond the glass doors. John sat frozen, his gaze locked on the now empty space where she had stood. The candle on the table danced, its flame casting a gentle, golden glow that played across the untouched wine. The vacant chair, the world he thought he knew. Suddenly, before his mind could dissect the moment or logic could intervene, John stood, not with haste, not with drama, but with a quiet resolve. He laid his napkin down, gave a subtle nod to the bewildered waiter hovering nearby, and stepped through the heavy restaurant doors into the enveloping night. He didn't understand why he felt compelled to follow, only that he must. His steps were soft, barely a whisper on the pavement, as the sounds of the city receded. She was ahead, clutching the baby close like a delicate shield against the harshness of the world. She moved with a swift caution, as if each shadow posed a threat to swallow her up. John, driven by something deeper than mere curiosity or pity, followed. It was recognition, a silent acknowledgement of something unspoken between them. The alley opened into a decrepit parking lot, surrounded by aging brick buildings. Here, amidst the spectral forms of abandoned cars, one stood out. A battered Navy sedan, its windows fogged, paint peeling, yet offering shelter. She approached it without hesitation, opened the back door, and settled inside with the baby. A thin blanket served as their makeshift mattress. She cradled the infant, her voice a soft whisper meant only for the child. Then her voice rose, trembling and tender, into a lullaby. "You are my sunshine." The scene was poignant, a stark contrast to the warmth and laughter of the restaurant he had left behind. Why did this moment feel so significant? Why did it beckon him from the comfort of his known world into this raw, unvarnished reality? In the twilight, as the last notes of the lullaby danced in the air, John stood in the shadows, spellbound. The infant, with a grip like a tiny vice on Emily's collar, fluttered his eyes closed, enveloped by the melody as if by a cozy blanket. Though the surroundings were stark, the love between mother and child was palpable, a beacon of warmth in the encroaching darkness. He moved closer, his presence finally breaking the spell. Emily, alerted by an instinct she couldn't quite name, turned, her eyes meeting his in a silent clash of curiosity and caution. "I'm sorry," John murmured, lifting his hands in a gesture of peace. "I just needed to ensure you were safe." "You followed me," she stated, her voice guarded, her stance tense. "Yes," he admitted, his eyes never leaving hers. She didn't flee, nor did tears spill. Instead, she scrutinized him, this stranger clad in opulence, assessing his intentions. "I watched how you fed him," John confessed, his voice tinged with awe. "It was unlike anything I've seen. I needed to understand." After a moment, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "His name is Noah. I'm Emily." "Noah," John repeated, the name feeling like a weight in his mouth. 8 months? She nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "He loves mashed potatoes." John's heart ached, his voice lowering. "So did my son." In that shared silence, as something unspoken passed between them. Emily didn't probe, just listened with the quiet empathy of one who had danced with sorrow. "I was studying to be a nurse," she began, her words simple, devoid of self-pity. "Then I found out I was pregnant. The father vanished. My parents turned their backs. I've been alone ever since." She continued, describing their life in the car, the makeshift home they had made with a worn blanket and a stack of baby clothes that looked like treasures in the corner. "I clean houses, wait tables when I can," she added. John, his gaze sweeping over the meager possessions, offered his help. "I can provide a hotel, food, whatever you need." With a gentle refusal, Emily raised a hand. "No, I'm not asking for money." His surprise was palpable. "Then what do you want?" he asked, his voice a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Just one day," Emily said, her eyes drifting to Noah, "where he's warm, full, and safe. That's all." Her words struck John with the force of a plea more poignant than any demand, as the street light above them flickered, casting a golden glow over her determined face. In the soft glow of the street lamp, John's gaze was drawn to something achingly familiar. There, in the depths of Emily's eyes, flickered a shadow of his late wife's gaze. It wasn't a perfect match, but close enough to fracture the walls he'd built around his heart. The sight of Emily, fiercely clutching her child, standing tall with love as her only shield, unearthed emotions John thought had been buried with his own wife and son. He stumbled back, suddenly unsteady, his voice barely a whisper. "Thank you." Emily's brow creased with confusion. "For what?" she asked softly. "For reminding me I still have a heart," John confessed, his voice thick with emotion. She didn't respond, only pulled Noah closer, resuming the lullaby that wove through the night like a thread of hope. John lingered, the melody enveloping him in its tender embrace. And though Emily offered no smile, she didn't shut the door either. That in itself was a universe of affirmation. From that night forward, John could not erase the image of the girl with the worn shoes and the child with the smile as bright as mashed potatoes. Despite the endless stream of emails and the relentless pace of board meetings, their faces remained etched in his mind. They were silent beacons, reminding him that in the same city where some sipped $1,000 wines, a mother and her child clung to life with nothing but kindness and resilience. He never spoke to her again, not right away. Instead, John acted with the same silent precision with which he had amassed his wealth. He found her car parked behind an abandoned church. Without intrusion, he left small tokens of aid by her vehicle in the pre-dawn hours. A canister of baby formula, a pack of diapers, a sealed container of homemade soup, its warmth still lingering. He orchestrated a visit from a pediatrician under the guise of a church outreach program. Emily didn't know who had sent him. She didn't inquire, but when the doctor left, she held Noah a little longer, a silent acknowledgement of the unseen kindness that had touched their lives. In the quiet moments, Emily found herself whispering, "Thank you," to the ether, her gratitude floating aimlessly in the void. Initially, skepticism clouded her heart. She had built her existence on the foundation of anticipated letdowns. Yet these silent acts of kindness arrived without fanfare, devoid of any written expectations or demands. No one ever asked her to wear a smile or to express gratitude. They were just there, unwavering, tender, and genuine. Gradually, her suspicion ebbed away, making room for a far more perilous emotion: hope. Then, as the chill of October nights deepened, calamity descended. Noah, usually a bundle of joy, had turned irritable, rejecting food with a stubborn frown. His forehead was unusually warm, But by nightfall, his fever had escalated alarmingly. Emily exhausted every remedy she knew. Cool cloths pressed against his forehead, gentle lullabies whispered in his ear, even rocking him in the backseat of their car. But his cries only grew more desperate, his breaths quick and shallow. In a rush of panic, she drove to the nearest hospital's emergency room. The woman at the front desk, her eyes never lifting from her paperwork, barely acknowledged Emily's urgent pleas. When the question of insurance arose, Emily faltered. I, I don't have any, she admitted, and the woman's expression turned to stone. We're at full capacity, she declared sharply. You'll have to wait or find another facility. Emily's voice trembled. He's just a baby. His fever is a 104. He's not responding. Please. The response was cold. Ma'am, without proper intake, there's nothing we can do. I'm sorry. Stepping out into the biting cold, Emily's breath formed clouds in the freezing air. Noah had gone ominously silent. She clutched him closer, her body quivering with both the cold and rising panic. With no other options, she reached for her old phone. Her fingers shook as she typed out a desperate plea. Help us. She wasn't even sure if he would come or why she believed he might. But within 6 minutes, the sweep of headlights cut through the darkness and John's black car pulled up to the curb. A sleek SUV screeched to an abrupt halt, its tires biting into the pavement. John leapt from the vehicle even before the engine had ceased its roar, his coat billowing like a dark flag in the fierce wind. His eyes were ablaze with a fierce urgency. Words were unnecessary, his arms extended in a silent plea. Emily, with a heart both heavy and hopeful, placed Noah into his waiting embrace. Miraculously, the infant did not protest, but instead, his tiny hand encircled John's finger, a gesture weak yet filled with an unmistakable trust. John, cradling Noah with an ease that spoke of long-forgotten familiarity, strode past the waiting line into the hospital. His voice, a blend of steel and fire, cut through the sterile air. I demand a doctor now. This child burns with fever. I will pay every cent, but if you delay even a moment, I will buy this hospital and dismiss every one of you. Noah was whisked away instantly. Emily, left in the corridor, trembled with fatigue, her head buried in her hands. John remained by her side, a silent sentinel. When the nurse returned with the news that Noah was stable, resting and under observation for the night, Emily released a breath she'd been clinging to since dusk. Her gaze met John's, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, her voice a mere whisper. You came? He nodded, the simplicity of his affirmation a balm to her frayed nerves. Tears cascaded down her cheeks, unbidden, as she leaned into him, her chest heaving with relief, perhaps grief, or simply the release of months of pent-up emotion. Her head found refuge against his shoulder, and John, without hesitation, enveloped her in his arms. He did not ask her to compose herself, nor did he seek explanations. He simply held her as the night stretched on, the hospital's fluorescent lights casting a cold glow around them. For the first time since motherhood had claimed her, Emily allowed herself to unravel. For John, embracing someone after a decade felt not like betrayal, but like a return to a part of himself he thought lost. They did not speak of the past, of the pain, or of promises broken. In that moment, beneath the sterile hum of the hospital, they found a silent, profound connection. In that fleeting moment, love did not speak its name, nor did it declare its intentions. Yet something profound and irreversible occurred, entwined in the steady heartbeat of a man who had vowed to shield his heart from further pain, and in the soft breath of a girl who had only learned to endure, not because she was saved by him, but because, for the first time, she didn't have to face the world's harshness alone. It all started with a photograph, slightly out of focus, captured under the cloak of night. There was John Maxwell, stepping out of an emergency room, cradling a newborn in his arms, with a young woman trailing just behind. Within mere hours, the image had ignited the digital world. Social media, blogs, and tabloid headlines erupted with fervor. The story of a tech mogul, a late-night rescue, a teenage mother, and a billionaire's unexpected kindness went viral. The internet was ablaze with commentary. Emily's anonymity was short-lived. A leaked hospital form stripped away her privacy, revealing her identity. What followed was a tidal wave of public opinion. Waves of speculation, judgment, and at times sheer cruelty. Some hailed John as a beacon of compassion and generosity. Others cast Emily as a cunning opportunist. "She's just a gold digger," they exclaimed. This was all part of her plan. What kind of man gets ensnared in such a mess? In the quiet sanctuary John had provided for her and Noah, Emily sat enveloped in darkness, the only light emanating from her phone. With each swipe, venomous words struck deeper, each headline a dagger of shame. Her chest constricted, her hands shook. Overcome with fear that even the light from her screen might taint her son, she turned it off. Noah, sensing the unrest, stirred in his crib. Emily rose, her touch gentle on his tiny chest, calming him. She then returned to sit on the bed's edge, her gaze lost on the floor until the morning light dared to creep in. When John entered, the shift in atmosphere was palpable. Emily, once vibrant, now seemed withdrawn, her posture defensive, her face a mask of distance. "I can't do this," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I refuse for my son to grow up amidst scandal, to one day read lies and question their truth." John, sensing the gravity of her words, sat beside her, his presence a silent promise of support. Beside her, John's voice was a gentle murmur, a soothing balm to the turmoil of her thoughts. "You didn't do anything wrong," he whispered, his words wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. Emily shook her head, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "People don't care," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "They've already decided who I am." John's resolve hardened, his voice steadying with a newfound determination. "Then let me tell them who you really are," he declared, his eyes burning with a fierce light. That very afternoon, he reached out to his publicist, not for polished statements or scripted press releases, but for something real, something unfiltered. The next night, under the soft glow of studio lights, John took to national television. The setup was unassuming, designed to strip away any pretense, to leave only the raw truth. The interviewer, sensing the gravity of the moment, asked nothing sensational, merely providing John the space to share his story. John did not start with Emily, but with Willie, Lillian, and Caleb. He delved into the painful silence of their loss, how the accident had not just ended their lives, but had also hollowed them out. He spoke of the illusion of success, how it masked a profound emptiness. "I stopped living the day they died," he confessed, his voice heavy with the weight of his words. Then he turned to Emily. "She wasn't looking for charity," he said, his voice softening as he recounted her story. "She wasn't even looking for help. She just wanted to feed her son." His voice cracked under the emotion as he continued. "She didn't take anything from me. She gave me something no one else could, a reason to care again, a reason to breathe." Looking directly into the camera, John's eyes were intense, his message clear. "Emily is not a headline. She is a mother. Noah is not a prop. He is a beautiful child. I did not save them. They saved me." The interview was a beacon of raw humanity, unguarded and deeply moving. And it worked. The next morning, the tide turned. Conversations online shifted. People began defending her. Mothers shared their own stories of struggle, of single parenthood, of poverty, of judgment. Nurses voiced out, shedding light on how many, like Emily, slipped through the cracks. Donations began to pour into shelters, a testament to the impact of John's heartfelt plea. In the heartland of Kansas, a community fund blossomed like a beacon of hope, a sanctuary for souls like Emily's. She, the silent guardian of her own story, chose not to converse with the press. Yet, come the dawn, there she stood, at John's doorstep, with Noah swaddled against the biting cold. No knock was needed. John, as if summoned by the very essence of her presence, opened the door before she could even raise her hand. Her gaze, though weary, bore the fire of resolve. "I'm not leaving," she declared, her voice a whisper, yet a roar of determination. "If you still want us, we're here." John's silence spoke volumes. Stepping aside, he welcomed them into the warmth of his home. And with that gesture, a door creaked open, not only to his abode, but to the chambers of his heart. Here, amidst the ordinary, an extraordinary family took its first breath. The apartment John arranged was a humble haven, its simplicity a stark contrast to the chaos of their past. With 2 bedrooms bathed in soft gray and windows that captured the gentle kiss of morning light, it offered a sanctuary. Emily, arriving with nothing but 2 duffel bags, a baby carrier, and the heavy burden of a life without refuge, found solace here. Within days, the space transformed. Noah's crayon masterpieces adorned the fridge, his tiny socks hung over the heater, and the air carried the sweet scent of baby lotion and the soft lullabies that whispered promises of safety. They did not define their relationship with words, at least not initially. There were no grand declarations, no labels, no timelines. Instead, they simply coexisted, their lives intertwining like threads in a tapestry. John's visits became as regular as the sunrise. Initially, they were under the guise of bringing necessities, but soon they were a ritual. He would enter, and Noah, with a joyful recognition, would bounce in his crib, the sound of the door a herald of joy. Emily, her hair always in that effortlessly elegant knot, would have coffee ready, and they would sit, sharing stories over breakfast. In these moments, John learned the tender art of holding a child, his hands becoming a cradle for dreams. Mastering the delicate art of angling a baby bottle just right, or warming milk to that perfect, soothing temperature, were skills John had to learn from scratch. Diaper changes, initially fumbling and awkward, soon transformed into displays of surprising dexterity. He became attuned to the nuances of Noah's cries, discerning hunger from mere discomfort, fatigue from sheer frustration. One tranquil afternoon, as he gently rocked Noah to sleep, the infant's tiny hand clutching his shirt, John was struck by a profound realization. He didn't want to leave. Not after this nap, not after the next hour. He wanted to remain. Emily observed this shift in John, the way he lingered, how he absorbed Noah's babbles as if they were orchestral masterpieces. John never sought to impress or dominate. He simply appeared day after day with gentle hands and eyes that, once empty, were now filling with light. She had never experienced a love that didn't demand something in return. But here was John, not aiming to mend her, not to claim her story as his own, but to journey alongside her. In those quiet hours between feedings and baths, a new profound bond took shape. Not the passionate, fiery love often celebrated, but something slower, deeper, cultivated from steadfast presence. One evening, after Noah had finally surrendered to sleep, Emily and John found themselves on the balcony, wrapped in silence, a shared blanket between them. The city below sparkled in hues of gold and blue, yet their gazes remained upward, lost in thought. Turning to her, John's voice was soft. "When I lost Lillian and Caleb," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I thought that part of me died with them, the part that wanted to care, to belong, to be needed." Emily's eyes, shimmering under the moon's gentle glow, met his. "You didn't lose it," she whispered back. "It just waited." The night passed without a kiss, yet their connection was palpable, a silent vow woven between them, understood without words. And then Emily smiled, a smile reserved solely for him, radiant and scarce, unlike the courteous grins for nurses or the automatic ones for Noah. For the first time in what felt like forever, John mirrored her with a genuine, tranquil smile, one that glowed with the quiet joy of healing. They were not lovers, nor were they yet a family by any formal declaration, but they had become something far more profound. Here were two souls, shattered by grief, who in each other found the gentle, steadfast beginnings of a home. One afternoon, an envelope arrived, tucked under their apartment door, as if carried by a fleeting breeze. Emily gazed at it, her hands quivering as she eventually opened the letter. The handwriting was unmistakable, tight and neat. Her mother's. The words were few, devoid of grand apologies or melodramatic pleas, just a simple, heartfelt request. "If there's still a chance to know my grandson, I would like to try." For over an hour, Emily sat at the kitchen table, the letter crumpled in her grasp, while Noah played obliviously with his colorful blocks. She didn't weep, nor did she seethe with anger. Instead, a heavy silence enveloped the room, almost tangible in its weight. When John returned that evening, he found her still there, lost in thought. "She wrote," Emily murmured without lifting her eyes. He approached, picked up the letter, and read it. After setting it down, he settled beside her. "What are you thinking?" he asked gently. "I don't know," she confessed. It's been 2 years had passed since the last time they spoke to her, since they uttered those painful words. "You are no longer our daughter." John nodded, his movements slow and thoughtful. "You don't owe them anything," he said, his voice steady yet gentle. Emily turned to him, her eyes veiled with doubt and confusion. "But what about Noah? Doesn't he deserve to know his roots, even if they're fractured? John paused, his gaze intense as he weighed his words. Don't let him grow up feeling the same void you did. Give him the choice to forgive or not, but let that choice be his. 3 days later, they embarked on a journey back to the town Emily once called home, a quaint expanse of rolling green hills and winding roads where every face seemed to carry the weight of yesteryears. Her parents' house loomed at the end of a gravel path, its white paint now weathered, the porch swing whispering in the breeze. Emily lingered outside, Noah nestled securely on her hip, his small fingers clutching her sweater. John stood just behind, a silent pillar of strength, allowing her to take the lead. The front door creaked open and a woman emerged. She was in her mid-50s, her once sharp features now softened by the sands of time and sorrow. It was Emily's mother. For a fleeting moment, time itself seemed to hold its breath. Then with a quivering breath, her mother stepped forward. Her eyes, now brimming with tears, first met Noah's, then settled on Emily. I wasn't strong, she confessed, her voice barely a whisper, thick with emotion. I was terrified of judgment, of losing the daughter I thought I knew. And in my fear, I lost you anyway. Emily remained silent, her lips slightly parted, her jaw set tight. Behind her mother, her father appeared, aged beyond his years, his hands nervously clasped before him. He gazed upon his grandson as though beholding something sacred. Noah, oblivious to the heavy history, reached out with innocent curiosity. In that moment, one might wonder, can forgiveness truly mend what has been broken? When everything crumbled, her mother faltered, her arms outstretched, but hesitant. May I hold him? She pleaded, her voice a fragile whisper. Emily paused, her heart a tempest of emotions, before gently placing Noah into her mother's trembling embrace. The older woman held him as if he were a precious hourglass, her tears falling softly as she murmured secrets to the boy who gazed back with wide-eyed innocence. John, standing slightly apart, felt his heart constrict. He was an observer, not a participant, in this poignant tableau. When Emily finally moved to embrace her mother, the air around the porch seemed to sigh in relief. The shadows of the past hadn't vanished, but they had blurred at the edges. Forgiveness, they realized, was not a bolt from the blue, but a gradual dawning of light. That same afternoon, the kitchen table, once a place of mundane breakfast, now cradled 3 generations. Emily's mother poured tea with a shaky hand, while her father gently rocked Noah on his knee. Laughter, absent for so long, echoed through the walls of the house. Across the room, Emily's eyes met John's. A silent conversation passed between them. Thank you, she mouthed, her gratitude palpable. John shook his head, a smile playing on his lips. No, he whispered almost inaudibly. Thank you for returning home. A year later, the world had transformed, but only in the ways that truly counted. The clamor had subsided, the headlines had dissolved. What remained was life itself, serene and potent. On a radiant spring day, they revisited the park where their journey had begun. The breeze whispered through the leaves, and the golden light cast a sacred glow over the field. There were no grand floral displays or photographers clamoring for angles, just a simple gathering of dear friends, a white linen cloth spread beneath them, inviting peace and reflection. An ancient oak stood sentinel, its gnarled limbs stretching wide as if to embrace the joy that unfolded beneath it. A humble wooden arch adorned with ivy and ribbon framed the scene, a symbol of simplicity and beauty intertwined. At the heart of this serene tableau was little Noah, now approaching his 2nd year, dressed in a navy vest and bow tie, his tiny hands gripping a velvet box with all the earnestness of youth. His wobbling steps across the lush grass were a testament to his determination, his mission clear, to reach the man who waited just steps away. John, not adorned in the finery of high fashion, but in a gentle gray blazer, stood there, his attire a silent nod to the humanity Emily had once recognized in him. His hair, now streaked with silver, fell freely, no longer a concern to conceal. His eyes, once dimmed by sorrow, now shimmered with a light more precious than any jewel. Hope. As Noah reached him, John knelt, his movements tender, taking the box from the boy's small, eager hands. Noah's laughter, pure and unburdened, filled the air as he toddled back to where Emily stood, her presence like a beacon. Barefoot, her white dress danced with the wind, but it was the life in her eyes, the glow of resilience after enduring the night, that made her breathtaking. John, now with the box in hand, moved forward and sank to one knee. The world around them seemed to hush, holding its breath in anticipation. Looking up at her, his voice was steady yet laden with emotion. "You didn't ask for anything," he whispered, his words a soft caress in the still air. "You didn't beg. You didn't expect. You just appeared on the darkest night of your life and gave me the chance to feel needed, to feel alive again." With a gentle click, the box opened to reveal a ring. Simple, elegant, chosen not for its cost, but for its profound significance. What could this ring symbolize? A promise, a new beginning, or perhaps a testament to enduring love? Envision the delicate dance of a ring slipping onto her finger, a symbol of a bond as she cradled their son. "You didn't just take my leftovers, Emily," John whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "You filled the voids I didn't even know existed within me. You've given me a family, love, and a future I never dared to dream of." His voice broke, tears shimmering like dew in his eyes. "Will you marry me?" Emily's hand rushed to her lips, her eyes welling up, tears cascading before she could even blink them away. She nodded once, twice, then collapsed before him, laughter mingling with her tears as she whispered, "Yes." They enveloped each other, their arms intertwining as if they were the missing pieces of a puzzle, lost to time and now joyously reunited. The minister began the ceremony, his words simple, his voice soft, while Noah, ever the curious toddler, played with the petals scattered on the ground, occasionally looking up, trying to fathom the adult's emotions. But it was during the vows, as John pledged not only to love Emily, but also the son who had united them, that Noah wandered over. With a sweet innocence, he wrapped his small arms around John's leg and chirped, "Daddy." The entire park seemed to pause, holding its breath. John, his eyes glistening, bent down to scoop up the boy, embracing him and Emily in one tender gesture. "I love you, son," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. In that moment, under the golden sun, with only a handful of friends and the vast sky as witnesses, all that had once been shattered felt miraculously mended. John hadn't merely saved a young mother from hardship. She had been his savior from grief, from the solitude of a life so polished and void it had nearly consumed him. And in the wake of loneliness, a new family was born, not through lineage or meticulous planning, but through a whispered promise, a heartfelt question, and a humble plate of mashed potatoes. They were now one, bound by love, by choice, by the unexpected joy that life sometimes, just sometimes, offers in the most unassuming ways. In this final chapter of our tale, we find that perfection was never the goal. Their love, their unity, transcended the need for flawlessness. Together, they discovered that being together was, in itself, enough. From the faintest whisper in a luxurious restaurant, a narrative of love, redemption, and second chance unfurled like a delicate flower. What started with a humble request for leftovers transformed into a profound journey, reshaping the very essence of what it means to be a family. John didn't merely open his heart, he flung open the doors to his entire existence. Emily, who once clung to survival, now embraced the warmth of a home. And little Noah, once nestled in the arms of a stranger, now strides confidently beside a father who chose him not out of obligation, but out of an overwhelming, unconditional love. Isn't it extraordinary how the quietest moments can birth the most magnificent stories? If this story has stirred your emotions, if it has ignited a spark of hope or perhaps even drawn a tear, please engage with us. Like, share, and above all, subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories. Here, every narrative is crafted to soothe your soul and remind you that compassion is indeed the most miraculous force of all. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Your presence means the world. We can't wait to share more with you in our next story. Remember, your comments, likes, shares, and subscriptions fuel our passion to continue telling these soul-healing tales. See you soon.